Alright, thanks for playing random trivia with us. And are you all set? Okay. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this all got started. We randomly got a donation of some medicine bottles from various Story City drugstores. And we already had some in our collection, so it kind of got me thinking of like, why don't we just do a medical exhibit? We need to switch something out of the curious times anyway. Actually, we look to the next part. So I got a picture here. This is in the carriage house. If anybody's interested in stopping by and seeing our full exhibit, please do. So Katie and I worked together for a while this past spring, trying to get this all together and figure out what we're going to talk about, right? We only have a set amount of space, and there's so much medical history in Story City. What are we going to pick and choose? So we had all of our volunteers go through and see what we had from different doctors and their medical equipment, which don't do that on a full stomach, so it's just Dr. Nancy Carlson has been a good volunteer for us this last couple of years, so she was helpful in telling us what things were. It was a fun process. But we've got some really cool things. Sandy, who knew that the hospital opened in 1951, her sister Alita was the first baby born in the hospital. So that is the baby Bucky there. She got us a prize for being the first baby born in the hospital. So we've got some really cool stuff. And I don't know if you can really tell, but there's a baby scale there from the hospital as well. So lots of fun stuff that we have. But so basically for this, we kind of focused on early doctors, similar medical, the hospital, the Story City Hospital, and then Bethany Manor, the first hospital as well. Pharmacies, sorry. So that's where we kind of went with for this. So we're going to go through and kind of show you what we've got, okay? So we're going to talk about early doctors first. So this is Dr. Moses Ballard. He was born in 1801 in Massachusetts to a soldier of the American Revolution. He actually married Eliza Beecher, who's a cousin of Harriet Beecher Stowe. So kind of fun fact there. He first studied medicine in New York and Ohio, and then practiced medicine in Cook County, Illinois, where he became a postmaster. And then by 1857, they arrived in Story County. So he was one of our first medical professionals here in Story County. He had, tall Jennifer Bridget. I'm sorry. He had a horse that he would go around with. So we have a really cool saddlebag, old doctor's bag here that's on display in our exhibits. That's really fun too. But he served for over 20 years in our community, so it's really fun to have that history too. We're going to kind of switch off back and forth here since we both worked on this.
So, because we're Norwegians, a lot of doctors also came here and spoke Norwegian, which was very helpful in our community. And this is Dr. Hans Herum. And so he was born in Oslo in 1873, and he married, and they left Norway, and he did, so he went to the University of Oslo and then did postgraduate work in Germany. So from there, he had connections to the US, and they immigrated in 1904 and were in practice with a Dr. Schwartz, who interestingly, shortly after there, went back to Norway. So didn't stay in Story City, but the Herums did. So that was interesting because he also was above Corneliuson and the department store, which we found a lot of the doctors had spaces above our downtown district. So that's kind of neat because Kate, also doing the downtown district project, has pictures of those. So that's kind of neat. And some of them, you can even tell they have their name in the window. So that's yeah. And he also, lots of doctors also worked out of their homes in this period. And he worked out of his in the southwest corner of the Grand Hotel.
Or southwest.
Southwest of the Grand Hotel.
So basically where the theater block is now, that was the
Grand
Grand
Hotel.
Hotel back in the day.
Yeah. And he was also appointed the Story City Health Physician in 1914, and he practiced for over 26 years. So a long legacy there.
Give questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just an interesting fact that you've got the Rollins group here.
Yeah.
His brother was a trained engineer architect who
Okay.
came to Story City by 1912, 1913, but he was the one who retired and was the architect for Salem Lutheran Church
Oh, cool.
in Roland,
Okay.
but died shortly after that. He joined, he was here only a short time, but he was a pretty renowned architect.
Oh yeah, there are quite a few. Speaking of Dr. Franson here, that also practice in Roland. So I'll pass it to Kate.
Good transition. Yep. We put hold on here because being women, we were excited to realize that there was such an early, she was a position in town or over at Roland by 1911 and then moved to Story City in 1913. She was a daughter of Andrew Franson and Anna Hermanson. She practiced, got her degree, at Still College down in Des Moines, and then did postgraduate work up in LA too. She was one, so basically we should say like the three of the corner buildings of downtown Story City basically all had doctor's offices above on the second floor. So when what is the Alley's Pizza building now was built in 1913, she was up the stairs above that there. She actually married Dr. Rice, and they actually moved to Cedar Rapids and were practicing there. So she didn't spend a whole lot of time here, but we went through Twitter. So we're trying to use some of these primary care doctors are people who were in town for a long time, so we're trying to do. There's so many in the early years that always came from public university.
And Dr. William Craig also is here, also went to Still College, no relation to myself, but my maiden name is Craig. He was born in Pennsylvania in 1890, went to Still College of Osteopathy in Des Moines, and then served in the First World War at Walter Reed. And then he came back several times to Story City, kind of like filling in for different doctors that were on leave, and started that in 1919. He had to go back to Pennsylvania to deal with some family things, and then was pulled back by Evelyn Fallon, of Story City, and married her in 1921, and they stayed. So he became a member of the American Legion, City Council, Chamber of Commerce, Masonic Lodge, was also a founder of the Story City Boy Scouts, and practiced in the Grand Hotel block as well. Unfortunately, in 1934, he had to retire due to health and died of tuberculosis at the age of 47. So, and then his son, Bill, we know him well in the Historical Society, and he went to New York and had a very good career of realty and was very talented and a musician. So
He worked for Sotheby's.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
The company.
yes. So yeah, some great people in our past that we can thank for what we have today.
You can see, I don't know if you can understand or see, are in the back that these are Story City Herald ads for all the doctors we put on here. You can tell how early this is. It's from 1923, but the residence phone number was 3.
Before we got down in Story City, it was 1.
Oh,
Yes. One of my dad's aunt had the first telephone, so she got number 1 and then.
yeah.
Okay, we're kind of getting to people you probably remember, some of you have had as doctors, right? So we've got Dr. Rose. And one of the fun things we have an exhibit from him is his microscope here that we have out. So he was actually born in Riceville, Tennessee in 1907, or excuse me, in 1880. Sorry, I'm reading too far ahead. In 1907, he got his medical degree from the University of Nashville, and then he practiced in Missouri and Tennessee. In 1915, he got married to Julia, and then they actually began practicing in Iowa first in Huxley and Gilbert. And then he served in World War I down at Fort Riley in Kansas. In 1923, they officially settled here in town. He ended up practicing for over 60 years, and 42 of those here in Story City with us. Again, one of his first offices was also above a downtown store. That was Jacobson Drug, which would be where the new barber shop is now, on that corner there, 601 Broad. He was a physician at the Story City Hospital as well, and he was actually recognized quite a bit for the State Medical Society for his dedication to his patients.
You think about where his office was, it must have been 30 steps going up the aisle. And he had his x-ray unit set up in the closet.
Oh. And then if you didn't feel very well, you had to go up the stairs, and the Story City Cafe was on the other side, so you could smell the grease, and you don't even know.
And he would make house calls too. He'd come out
yes.
to the farm.
I think, is it his bag we have? I can't remember. Yeah, we have a couple different doctor's bags, and I think his is one of them. Do you remember?
So,
I was just telling the story. Dr. Rose sat by the nurse's station at the hospital one day, and he quietly sits there and says, "I hope they don't have rose or violets in heaven." His wife had many, many violets. She was on vacation, and he was having to water
So we come to Dr. Lepwa, and he was also born in Minnesota to Norwegian immigrants. So when he came here, he also knew Norwegian and was very helpful. He was born in 1893, and then through his childhood and his first practices were in Dows for 8 years. And then he served in World War I, attended medical school at the University of Iowa in 1922, and then married a graduate nurse in 1924, Catherine in Ogden, and then they moved to Story City. And from there, he practiced over 30 years in Story City and was named senator because he served as mayor and he was on the city or Story City School Board. And then in World War II, which I think this is a cool story, he was the U.S. Naval Lieutenant Commander based in the Pacific and California's naval hospitals in San Diego and San Francisco. And then was also a Scoutmaster. So he earned his Eagle Scout rank, and he also belonged to Masonic Lodge and American Legion. And we could have written much, much more on all of these doctors, really. But we summarized them, and in the museum, if you come and see the display, there are biographies on each one of these that are more detailed and a few more pictures and different things. So.
Another one here, Dr. Heisey. Does anybody remember Dr. Heisey? Yeah, quite a few. Okay, so he was born in Iowa, so Missouri Valley. He attended the University of Nebraska Medical School. Wow, World War II, he served as a pilot in the U.S. Army. In 1943, he married Dorothy. And then in 1950, they moved to Story City, and at first he practiced out of his home. He established an office at the corner of Broad Street and Grand. You guys remember that? Like, that's where there's apartments there now in that building. Yeah. He actually ended up serving in community for over 38 years. In 1951, he was the doctor that delivered the second baby in the hospital. Alita was actually born the day before the hospital opened. She couldn't wait.
Well, Dr. Summer lived across the street from us. And Ron called, he said, well, you can be she opted to go to the hospital with, everything was there but medicines,
Yeah.
no pharmacy. So, whatever was in his bag, what she got, how to take.
Dr. Heising was a pretty active member of our community as well. Served on city council. And his son, Dr. Robert Heising, was actually at the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester and the head of all of those departments that you see. So, continued the family legacy of medicine there too. Okay, so those are kind of our earlier doctors, okay? We're going to transition on here, and we're going to talk about the Story City Old People's Home and Sanitarium, which was the original name to this building. And we remember it was built in 1913 from our trivia questions. It officially opened in 1914, though. So that's basically the current site now for Bethany Life. It started out in 1912. The Story City Commercial Club Committee was realizing there was a need for a proper hospital and care for the elderly here in the community. In our research, we found that there was a first hospital here in town. It was on the corner of Broad and Lafayette. We think in just a residence. And it was about a year, like 1899 to 1900. So, I don't know. But so it's been 14 years basically without a hospital. So 5 acres was donated down there by where Bethany Life is now. And over 550 people contributed to this project. And so it was based on a group of different churches who also donated money. It was a total of 40 rooms and a kitchen and a dining area. So let's see. They had a celebration in June of 1914. There were 1,000 people attended that celebration. And in the first year, they had 11 residents who were on the old folks side, if you will, and 645 over that first decade, with only 15 deaths.
And in the registry, you were either American or Norwegian.
Correct. Yeah. We actually have on display over here the original register book from 1914 up to, I believe, 1956. So it's really fun to look at. If anybody went over and looked, I had Mayor Mike's birth page open.
There's a lot of that poured down. The beauty of it is, there used to be a book in the Brick Museum
It's this one.
about this thick,
Yeah.
and everything was handwritten.
That's
They're
it.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I just want to just found my birth.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
You can flip through all cursive if you can read it.
Okay. So in those first several decades, they continued doing a hospital half and a retirement center half. By 1947, the hospital portion had been discontinued. They were kind of starting to try and do that before during World War II, but they wanted to wait till the end of the war before that happened. So by 1963, 30 different congregations of conferences in the Des Moines area started the Bethany Manor Corporation, and then they took over responsibilities for the nursing home portion. In 1967, the nursing care wing was added there. That's the top picture. That was over a $365,000 project. And then they did another expansion in 1975, which was a $2.7 million project. They like to expand over there, don't you guys? Yeah, you guys are great on it. In 1989, by then, Bethany Manor had 167 beds, 63 private and 52 double rooms. They added a new chapel and a food prep area. And then in 1990, the memory care unit was added. And then, so these are just some other things that they've done over the years. So by 2002, that's when Timberland Village, the location out of the northeast side of town here, was added. 2003 was the twin home expansion. And then 2009, they started doing Bethany at home services. And that could include anybody up to a 25-mile radius here of Story City. In 2014, they celebrated their 100th anniversary, which last year was 110th. And then in 2015, the household model was introduced. So now they have the Bethany Life, Bethany households of Bethany models in there, which is a really interesting thing if you guys haven't been down there. But anyways, really enjoyed that. So we have the front entrance here of Bethany Life from about 2020. Do you need to share memories of Bethany? You're good. All right, we'll move on to the Story City Hospital.
Okay, so we found some very fun things for the Story City Hospital. We found some of the original pictures that the newspaper had taken of before the opening and the open house and things. And they're over here in a 3-ring binder on display if you want to take a look at those. Those are kind of neat. And some other pictures of staff and some babies and different things over here too. So take a look before you leave. So on the left we have we have the new hospital. So that's from 1960 postcard, and then we have right before the addition, and then we have the new front that we have of Mary Greeley, or McFarland. Mary Greeley, sorry. Farland's So this was 1951 to 1995. It officially opened on April 17th, 1951, like we said. In the top picture, we have the nursery, which I thought that was a really cool picture. You can't really tell there, but it's like looking through the window, and it has the curtains around it. It's really cool. It was built with $50,000 of the city from the city bond issue, over 400 private donations as well. And then April 16th, 1951, first baby's born, Aletha Rod, delivered by Dr. Sumler. And then April 17th, 1951, the second baby born was Bruce Mortwee, delivered by Dr. Heisey. And then 8 patient rooms and 16 beds, so you had to share. They had a lot of pictures of the staff and the nurses in the 1951 opening, so I thought that was really nice. We could have listed all of them, but on the posters we have a few more details. So. And so this was a big deal. So between the ending of having the hospital, the old hospital, in Story City, and the opening of this, there's a gap in there, and patients either had to go to Ames or they went to Jewel some and had babies there and things. So we found the doctors that serve Story City were also from many places around as well. In 1964, the second wing opened with 16 additional rooms for resident care. So resident care would be like, there were some elderly people that weren't quite ready to transition back to Bethany or over there yet, they would stay there and then OB. 1969, administration addition is built, and the hospital employs 40 people, 9 doctors, and 1 associate. The daily board, room and board is $8.
That's for an ask for an office.
We serve the communities of Story City, Roland, Randall, Jewel, Radcliffe, McCallsburg, and Williams. So that's a big area. Many physicians practice general family practice in their communities or like in their own clinics or their own home, out of their own home still. And then they would do their surgeries, the birth, and the residential care, and make rounds and take turns in the Story City Hospital. And then, unfortunately, in 1995, Story City Memorial Hospital closed, but we didn't lose care in Story City. We also, we can't believe it. I can't forget the ambulance.
I talked to Terry Grayfield earlier. When was the last week, Terry? He was asking if we were going to talk about any of the ambulance or EMTs. I'm like, no, I didn't have any information about it. And I was randomly looking in the Story City Heralds for something else, and I found this great picture, which Terry did. I'm not going to read all of those names because it's a huge group, but you may recognize some of them. But yeah, I am open to anybody giving me more information about any of the stuff we're talking about tonight. So we always love getting more, and we may be getting a new medicine cabinet already that we're talking about. So we're excited.
He didn't give you that picture, did he?
No,
Terry?
I found it.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure
it's
he
from the
wasn't.
Herald.
It's from the Herald, yeah.
October 30th, 1991.
Yeah.
And here we have Mary Greeley and McFarland. So in late 94, 94, there were talks starting with representatives from the city, Story City Hospital, Semler Medical, Mary Greeley Hospital, and McFarland Clinic to discuss the future of the healthcare in Story City. And in May of 94, then the city council approves the sale of the hospital, 600. Oh yeah. Approved the sale of the hospital for $661,000 and the adjacent land for $6,500, where McFarland Clinic would construct the new outpatient facility. Then Semler Medical's team of doctors, who also practiced at the Story City Hospital, Dr. Charles Semler and Dr. Nancy Carlson, transitioned to care with patients to McFarland.
Have anything they want to talk about the transition?
It was hard to figure out dates and different things in the Herald because it was a long discussion and that was a hard choice for us all to make. So.
Now you can fill us in more later if you want to.
So we did a lot of this together, and so we've shared a lot of different, hey, did you find this? Oh, I found this in the Herald. Did you find this? So if you haven't utilized digitization of the newspapers, of the Story City Herald specifically, on the library website, this is a plug. Check it out, and then plan on being on it for a while. This is a rabbit. Great things. But we found lots of things for the pharmacy. So we found ads and, celebrations, there's new openings, and pharmacies moved around. And what we think of as pharmacy today is not necessarily what a pharmacy was, right? So when it started. So they had anything from medicine to wallpaper, to perfume, to toys, to fireworks, you name it. They were selling it and advertising. Over time, approximately 17 pharmacies from the 1860s through today, and some, like our grocery stores, if you heard that presentation, were renamed and relocated several times. So, or they combined with somebody else and then changed their name, but it's really kind of the same people. So, and then so we have Devendorf's drugstore over here, New Cara.
That's the Story City Pharmacy.
Story City Pharmacy, and then Allen and Dale. From that one in the upper right is 1887, and Devendorf's is 1897. So we have a lot, and they're old.
You put them in your pocket. I will just say, location-wise, if you guys are interested, Devendorf's was on the corner where Ellie's Pizza is today. Before it was the bank building, so it was a nice old wood frame building. And then the Story City Pharmacy there, that wood frame building there is where the grass lot is now between, Block West, the western block, by the daycare. Yeah. So this is a list of all of the pharmacies looking back. So hopefully you guys can see them in the back. There were a lot. You can see some of them, they've only been there a couple of years. Others, like George Crammy, he started in 1904 to 08, and he was with the guy with the last name of Jones. And then Jones left, and Crammy moved to like Gilbert, so he was like around here, I think. I don't know. But then he came back to town and practiced, in it for another decade or so. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the Yakels and their 2 locations. We've had New Cara with us since 2006 in their present location. And you can see some fun ads here, and they're talking about a vineyard at the Story City Pharmacy. I don't know if you can taste wine there yet. Yeah, Grammy Drug sold fireworks, whatever you need. One of the things we did focus on was the Gandorf family in our exhibit, since they did serve the community for over 114 years. W.D. was born in 1864, and then he attended Oslo University and graduated there with a pharmacy degree. In 1878, he settled in Story City with his wife and children. And the Norse drugstore store there on the right is their first location. Actually, it's just west of the chamber building. That's where that was located. that was their first building. It was 1915. The building next to them was where the bank was, and that they tore down. We're going to build a new one. So we said, well, I should build a new one too. So they built those two new ones there in 1915. It's just the ones that the Burns family just redid, where the Norseman Realty is now in those two locations there. He was actually instrumental in Danish immigration to the U.S. He was one of the two Danish vice consuls serving here in the U.S. So he would help shepherd people this way. Supposedly, Sue, he was the first one to have a phone. So I don't know.
Number 0.
The switchboard was in the pharmacy, and so originally, so you know, I mean, use
Yeah. He eventually passed the business on to his two sons, Harold and Arthur. And they were graduates of Highland Park School of Pharmacy down in Des Moines. So kind of continuing on a legacy, here's the new building on that same location. This photo is from 1970, which wasn't really a new building at that point anymore, but Arthur's son Burton then also attended Highland Park School and continued on the family legacy. He bought the building, or bought the business in 1932. Burton spent over 50 years serving the community here. In 1970, they were honored by the Iowa Pharmacy Examiners for dedication to the field. And Burton ran the store with his son Wallace, also known as Wally. Everybody, you guys know him or do it. Wally graduated from Drake with a degree in pharmacy, and in 1963 he purchased the business. So their building, their business was known for a gathering place to read comic books, get a cherry cola, or from the night mechanically refrigerated soda bottle. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they also had warm nuts. They had them went around, and there'd be like mixed nuts and there'd be cashews. And you could get this bag of warm.
It went a long way.
Alright, so in 1975 is when they built the new building in the part of the southeast block of downtown at 618. They completed that. It's over 5,000 square feet. It was one of the largest drugstores in the county at that point. The family business also included Wally's daughters, Angela and Mila. And in 1980, they received a Centennial of the Year Award from the Iowa Pharmacists Association. And then also in 1980, they were a subsidiary of Snyder Drug. They were also Walgreens, I believe, Walgreens at one point. With Wally's retirement, though, they liquidated in 1992. Okay. So the last thing we want to talk about is Stellar Radical, right? So we found this ad. I think this is also from the 1991 Progress edition of the Stories Day Girls. So we talked about a lot of the businesses in the community and how they were going and what was going on with them. So in the top picture here in the ad, you can see the first Stellar Clinic, and that photo from 1956. That was on the corner where the library is today. So I believe, Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, your parents lived there, you lived there, correct?
We lived upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah.
And then the office is downstairs. Actually, our kitchen was on the first floor also.
Okay. And then they built across the alley, or what is the alley now, they built the Sumner Medical Facility in 1960?
Around 60.
Yeah, 59, 60, yeah.
Mark has tonsils out at the house.
Okay. I knew that was a while ago, right? All right, so we'll give you the rundown of Dr. C.D. Semler here, Doc Senior. He was born in Johnson County, Iowa. 1938, he married Vera. In 1942, he received his medical degree from Kirksville College. And then in 1944, they moved to Story City and practiced out of that building that I showed you. He was the one to deliver the first baby in the hospital. In 1960, they opened the new clinic, which is at 616 Park. And he was also a very community active member. He, Boy Scouts, Chamber of Commerce, school board, and assisted with the golf course when getting that established. We're going to let Chuck talk a little later too, so feel free to ask him questions, whatever you want. Chuck was born in Creston, Iowa, and he moved here as a young child. We were talking earlier, about 1 year old. In 1965, he married Cheryl. He completed his medical school through the State University of Iowa in 1968, and he also served in the U.S. Air Force, including a year over in Vietnam. In 1971, they returned to Story City and joined Doc Sr. in the family practice. And then he also practiced obviously at the Story City Memorial Hospital in McFarland, and that switched over. He retired in 2009, and again, Chuck's been an active member in our community. And then the other member, long-standing member of the Center Medical was Dr. Nancy Carlson. She was born in 1958, and she received her bachelor's degree in science from the University of Minnesota. Also in 1980, she married John. In 1989, she earned her DO from the University of Osteopathic Medical and Health Sciences. And then in 1992, she completed her 3-year family practice residency down in Des Moines. She joined the Center Medical in 1992, and then transitioned over to McFarland when they transitioned with the move. And she just retired a few years ago in 2001 after 3 years of practice. And like I said earlier, she's been helping us out and is a member of the community as well. Oh, I forgot about this.
Questions, and if anybody has questions, that's fine. But I'm going to have to kind of skip over this because most of
Can't
it.
hear you.
Well, that's okay. That's good. No. I was just going to tell you that before Dad came here, he practiced in Gravity, Iowa. A lot of you may not know about that, but that's just south of Creston. And he kind of left just because it was a little tough. I think he got $2 for an office visit, $3 for a town house call, and $4 for a country visit. And he talked about the time he went out there in the country and got stuck. So the farmer came out with his tractor and got that stuck. And then he had to go get the team of horses. And after I was in practice, he got a letter one day, and I said, "What's that?" He's just kind of grinning like, "I don't believe this." There was a guy sending $4 from when he was in Gravity, which was back 43, 42 in that era. And the guy couldn't pay him at the time, and he sent it to him, and that was in the 70s. People are good. And he also told the story about when he was going to school down in Kirksville. He had to write to the company where he bought a stethoscope and said, "I'm sorry, I can't make the 50-cent payment this month." So it was lean times. Well, then when he graduated from Kirksville, well, the war was going on, so he went to apply to be in the military. Well, at that time, the osteopaths and the MDs didn't get along. And it was an MD board. And they said, "Well, no, we're not going to take you as an osteopath into the military. You can either come in as a private, or you can stay home and take care of people here." Well, he thought that made a lot more sense, so that's what he did. And so anyway, he knew Dr. Honsiger, and I'm not sure how he knew Dr. Honsiger, who practiced with him for a few years. I don't remember, but he had mainly been down in Ames and did the surgery. It was through him that he found out that Story City maybe could use another physician. And that's how he ended up here. Some of the docs that you alluded to with the different towns, we had Dr. Larson in Nolan, Dr. Barry up in Williams, And we had Dr. Mullen in Ellsworth, and Dr. Galton was in Jewel for a while. And then my dad and Dr. Heisey were here. And of course, by the time I showed up, then Oscar had left, and Rose and Leckman were done working. But there were times back there, you know, when we had the school vaccinations. They came out with the measles vaccine, and we all lined up in school, and the docs would sit down there, and you just got in the row there, and you get your shots. Oh, that reminds me, I need to go back to the thing you were talking about with Dr. Rose and Julia, because we ended up living in their house. Well, after we bought it. But there were fun things about that too, because he never had a garage. They had this carriage house out back, and he parked his car in there. He was going to build a garage, but those people wanted $100 to build a garage, and he was going to wait till the price went down. And when we bought the house, we had to go around all the windows, and she had glass about 4 inches wide, multiple ones, in the windows where she kept her violet plants. And then we actually named the room downstairs in the basement the plant room, because she had grow lights down there and she had plants. Well, I understand where Dr. Rose was coming from. Okay, so there's a leaf that we don't need that. We had all the people at the hospital. I'll tell you, that was like a family. We really were. And you may not realize it, but we still get together. Probably 3 or 4 times a year. Twice. That seems like 3 or 4 times. And half the time I forget, so that's but it's a fun get together and to see them. And of course, it get kind of old. You know, there were times when the weather would be bad and we'd have a snowmobile to go out and pick somebody up to get them here. And people like Patsy and were always available here in town, so people got snowed in. Patsy was there in the hospital recovering, you know. So it was.
And even the kids. Our Brian helped make breakfast one morning.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
He worked after school and helping with the janitors. He was in here. So.
Well, and you know, just even the cooks. We had great cooks now, the Christians and Ian Nicole and Aaron Howard and all that. Good people. But they'd come upstairs and say, how many patients do we have today? And they'd do a count and say, well, we've got about 7. Okay, and then the staff. Okay, then they'd go downtown and buy that many pork chops and whatever they needed, and they would cook great meals. So it was, we did have some advantages. They got nice care, you know, with people like Zeta Danielson and the other aides. You know, these people would come in, maybe I did surgery on somebody, and the next day, you know, they felt crummy. But they'd come in and Zeta and somebody else, they'd get their hair all fixed up. And I said, they could make people feel much better than I ever could. It was great. And I just wanted to mention Gary Isley, Gary and those guys that were on the ambulance crew. We had Jim, and we had an excellent, one of the best crews around that year. They were phenomenal. And everybody wanted to be a part of it. That's why you saw that big crowd of people there by the ambulance. And we can probably talk about what we ought to be doing right now for an ambulance in Story City, because it's, you know, it's subpar, I think. You know, yeah, we get the ambulance very freely, but it takes that extra time to get here. Okay. When we talk about room rates. Oh, I gotta tell you something. I was doing surgery one day in the OR. She won't want this. And the lights went out. Well, the generator came on because we'd gotten a generator from the military that would have run the town, I think. But anyway, came right back on and everything was fine. Well, as it turns out, later on we found out that Cheryl had come over to the hospital, back into the light pole and knocked out the power. And she kind of thought maybe she had committed the perfect crime, but I think the license plate was.
Personalized, so I had to go back to get it. Chief was there.
Oh, and I was gonna mention that Cheryl and Cookie Peterson redecorated all the rooms in the hospital. You could see on one of the pictures of those early, they were pretty Spartan. And they came in and we put in chair rail, they put up all the wallpaper, painted the walls, and we got some TVs in the rooms, and it really did look very nice. But I think the other thing I need to point out is that we had a very low infection rate at the hospital. And I think a lot of that was really because of the people that cleaned the hospital and took care of it. They did a really good job. And the staff, the nursing, and the aides, and everybody, it made a big difference. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to talk about the office just a minute. I'm like Mark. I had my tonsils out of the whole house. But even so, when I got back, Dad did raise the prices at the office, and it was up to $6. We had no appointments. You came in and sat down in the waiting room. It's like going to the barber. Excellent. You know, you didn't know if it was a short thing or a long thing. What? Oh, 1971. Yeah. And, I mean, they had the ashtrays in the dining, or in the waiting room, they had it in the hospital, and it wasn't long, I was not about to put up with that. Even the dead. Like Rose. Those guys were all smokers. Dr. Chappell came in 1972. Dr. Chappell was a flight surgeon with me over in Vietnam when we got to know each other, and he came and took a look at the place and said, yeah, I think that'd be good. And he was a good doctor. It was nice to have him here, and he was here for 8 years, and then went back to Ohio. We started actually having a call schedule with the docs when Dr. Chappell came, because we had 3 of us. Up to that point, it was kind of like either called Dad, or they called me, or they called Dr. Isaac, and we went over to the hospital and saw him. And then our summer medical also serviced Ellsworth, starting about 1975, and that went Nancy, do you remember when we went going up there? It was 90 or 92 or somewhere in that area. And then sometimes we subbed on the ambulance and helped out if they didn't, were short on the crew. And so I retired in 2009 after 38 years, and I enjoyed it. I loved doing it. And I can't think of a better thing, and I appreciate all the people that allowed me to take care of it.
Chuck, that was great information. I want to thank Katie for helping out with this. She's been a great help the last several years with all of her projects. I forgot to mention it earlier, I want to thank our lovely volunteers who made our meal. That was wonderful. After our last program, I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'll let you guys go. After our last program, yeah, I'll get to that too. At our program with Fairway, somebody came up to me and said, oh, I thought you were going to ask how many people had worked at a grocery store. Oh, that would have been a great question to ask the audience, you know. So I'm going to do it now and say how many people in the room have either worked at Bethany, worked at the hospital, were in the ambulance corps, worked at a pharmacy, anybody in any of the medical profession? Christine, you can raise your hand too, I'm sorry. We've got several in here, right? Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. Okay.
Can I just say one?
Go for it.
Years ago, you go to the hospital to visit somebody, and you walk in the door, and there was a plaque that listed everybody's name and the room that they were in. You know, there was nothing private then. When Anne was born, we were getting ready to leave that day. She had on this cute little pink outfit. So Zeta gets on the internet. Barbara Braylon is gonna be leaving now, if anybody wants to come see her. People came up from the kitchen, I mean. Yes, yeah, it was in the Herald, why you were in the hospital.
Yeah.
So.
Ask Jim what years he was here, and then some of the names of the other hospital administrators.
I was hospital CEO when I started here on night duty, and I helped work in the business office, and I was an orderly for a while, and I went from orderly to CEO of the hospital. I think that when I interviewed, there were 166 people who applied for the job, and I got it. I probably the least qualified. I had some experience, and they taught me computers, things like that, in service, but I learned most about management from the local full-bird colonel in the Sac Air Force. So I knew how to deal with some people in that, but that was, why would they choose me? Well, Pete Larson was the chair of the board, and I'm sure he's the guy that but I took from going back, Vance Thomas was just before me, and going back, help me with, who was before Vance Thomas? Help me.
Henderson. Was she still, was it Sylvia yet?
Oh, Sylvia was before, the Sylvia.
Sylvia.
Yeah.
Yes, and talking about Sylvia, I started working in 1956.
No, before.
Did you say it was close?
Before that.
Yeah, 56. And she took me on a tour to the hospital and introduced me to the different departments. And she said, and by the way, we're a small hospital. If you are having a quiet day and the kitchen needs help with the dishes, if the laundry needs help folding clothes, you go help with that. And that's the way we work. Everybody helped everybody else. If I needed help with a patient in the x-ray room, nurses would right down there and help. We weren't brought together.
When I was still in nurses training, and if we'd ever have time off, and I'd work at the hospital, never replied anything. Sylvia said, come in whenever you can. And then Myrtle Helen was superintendent at that time, and she'd say, so I'd work nights usually, and she'd say, oh honey, we'll be quiet. You go in the lobby and sleep, I'll wake you up. And we get busy again, so, yeah.
There are two stories I'd like to tell. One of them was the greatest thing was the support, the auxiliary leagues.
Yeah.
They were there doing stuff, fixing stuff. They would make jams. They would, they would help with all sorts of things. If you needed something, they were there. But the greatest thing of all was when they had meetings, they would all park on the west side of the building. You look out and look like an antique car show. I would love to have any one of those cars. Grandma Doolittle, she was still delivering Meals on Wheels in the 90s, and they said, well, why are you doing this? She said, you ought to be getting. She says, no, I'm not going to have anybody deliver me. I'm not here to help them. But, I mean, they were hardy people, and they worked with the volunteers were fantastic. The second story, the ambulance, we started in about 93 when we got the new ambulance, really the real ambulance, but if you go back in history, it was the funeral home directors, service to the communities, and they had hearses. And they would do that.
Throw and go.
57 Chevy station wagon.
That was my dad's car that they bought and used
high official, the government came in and said, and that was the best thing that came out of Vietnam was emergency medicine. We started in how to air back people and how to do things. We got the real ambulance, and, but we started with, and Roland was still running theirs, and they had a 1940 white Cadillac. It was a hearse, and there was a bad accident out here in the Blacktop, and they triggered both of us. We went and we got there first, and as we were there, the Cadillac got going about 120 miles an hour, but the brakes didn't, so it kept shooting back. Finally retired those old hearses, and they switched, but that was a traumatic thing to go from and there was some politics and all that, and there's always been rivalry, but we ended up with a cooperation. We had true paramedics that were first responders. They did a great job.
No other place had paramedics as first responders. They would be working in the emergency room, they didn't work anywhere else. We started the EMT program here back when I came in '75, and then we took everything down very Greeley. We were the first paramedic program to be set up in the state. And a lot of, like me, remember the show Emergency with Johnny and Roy, a lot of that people started demanding that kind of service that they had. So a bunch of us went down to Ames and started classes. We went from EMT to advanced and paramedic. But yeah, we were some of the first paramedics in the county. Mary Greeley had some, but we had a lot here too. It was a fantastic service. I enjoyed it. I was on it like almost 30 years. So it was great. Loved every minute of it.
I was on for like 9 months in a row. And you carry a pager 24/7, so we got paid 20 cents an hour to cover liability and that, but then we donate that back so we could get a shirt with our name on it. That's very
Yep.
Terry, you were there a lot of times.
Yep. I was a policeman on the street, so I was the first one there. I got frustrated because I didn't know how to take care of people, so I joined the ambulance crew, took the EMT training. So.
It was amazing. I think that model we had, it's too bad we can't recreate that, because what we had with the first responders was one of the first, and it was really a great crew. Yeah. It saved a lot of lives.
Yes, it was.
Now, you gotta do that when you can't do it when money is not physically. It's incredible. Well, I know we used to go out, even Doc Sennett would volunteer to help with his little white 4-wheel drive.
Said oops on it?
Well, I went with you once and you got us stuck and we had to dig through about this 5. I went from out there to I think they took me in CCU.
I think the wind chill was -40 that day. We took a truck home from the hospital.
I went on a couple runs with you with that truck too. He'd come pick up a couple of his ambulance people. We'd head out the country because people couldn't get there.
That was 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Good.
But we took snowmobiles too, and I still have nightmares. I went to pick up Dorothy Peterson so we could keep the laundry going, and I said, "Hey, now we're going to go," and I took off, and I looked back, she rolled off back. Everything went well.
Yeah, that snowmobile came all over for, I don't know, days. Really snows, yeah.
Okay. So now I gotta go back. Okay, we got one more thing to do. Oh yeah. I did a lot of this research, like Kate, but these stories, this is not. No, you don't hear. We don't get that from the stories of Carolyn. I mean, we get a lot of stuff, but not these stories. So keep sharing them because we youngins don't know all this, and we love to hear that. And then also, in doing all the research, we couldn't do all the eye doctors and the chiropractors and the dentists. I mean,
Story City has such a rich medical history, and I've lived here my entire life, and you just take it for granted, and then you look around and you're like, oh, we were actually a small town, and look how much we had. And then you see how many communities came to Story City to get medical care. That's a big thing. So thank you for everyone who contributed and still contributes. So thank you.
That was a great comment. We didn't mean to leave anybody out. It's just more spatially in our original exhibit, and tonight, time constraints, we were trying to, maybe someday we'll talk about chiropractors and other types of doctors. So, okay, our last fun thing of the night. If you donated to our annual campaign, we have a couple of large rose mulling pieces. Maybe Ben, if you'll grab let's do the big one first, the tall one.
Good job. You've done that before.
Ooh, Nancy!
I didn't hear it speak.
Oh, Claudia! All right, Claudia's not here. I think she's down south right now, but yeah, we'll get that to Claudia. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Feel free to hang out a little bit. We still have those albums up here if you want to look at anything. If you're going to share any more stories here, let me know. Otherwise, I don't know if there's still snacks or things up there. Feel free to take something on the way out. But thank you again for coming.